Hello and welcome to our talk on adaptive sampling using POMDPs with domain-specific considerations by Gautam Salhotra, Chris Denniston, David Caron, and Gaurav Sukhatme from the University of Southern California. We start with the background on adaptive sampling, cast it as a POMDP, and talk about the POMCP solver to plan in this POMDP online. Then, we move on to our contributions in improving the solver for the adaptive sampling problem. We discuss three contributions. 1. Rollout allocation, where we decide how much computation to allocate at each step for the online planner. 2. First step exploration, where we look at different methods for selecting the best action from the decision tree inside POMCP. And 3. Plan commitment, where we discuss utilizing this tree for taking a sequence of action instead of a single action, thus saving computation time. We then move on to combining these contributions and discussing the combined results and concluding with the key benefits of our method. In adaptive sampling, we sample a phenomenon in the environment and try to estimate its underlying distribution. This makes it more efficient than a full coverage search, and we build our model using a Gaussian process with the sampled values. Our application is more interested in the high concentration areas, such as to find areas of high environmental risk, and our objective function reflects this preference. However, other applications can also be used with our method. We test our contribution on three datasets. The first one is an analytical dynamic function. The other two are validation environments using real datasets obtained in the field. We cast the adaptive sampling problem as a POMDP. The POMDP state is the objective function f that we maximize and the robot position xt. Our observation is the value yt we sample at position xt. Our belief is the estimated underlying function f based on the observation sampled in this POMDP. Note that the robot state is deterministic. Our action is the next point to search, x of t plus 1. The POMCP Planner works by running a Monte Carlo tree search over beliefs, starting with the current belief as the root. It builds this tree T over a fixed number of MCTS iterations, where it adds a node every time it has a rollout from a leaf node L. After these iterations, it executes the best action at the root level. This ends the current step of POMCP. The new belief it reaches serves as the root of the new MCTS tree in the next call POMCP, and the cycle repeats. So with this background, here is our baseline POMCP planner. We call the planner get the MCTS tree and pick the best action at the root for the agent to execute. We will now describe our three contributions over this baseline. The first contribution is the dynamic allocation of rollouts to the POMCP planner. The baseline gives a fixed number of rollouts at each step, but this is not optimal for the following reasons. First, when the agent begins an episode, the model contains very little data to plan on. Thus, at the beginning, it cannot do much better than greedy because it has less information. Once we get enough information while exploring, it can do better by forming complex longer plans and get measurably better than greedy. Thus, it could help to have fewer iterations at the beginning. This is not a problem in other domains, like say video games, where the generator function is known completely beforehand. Second, the objective function gives diminishing returns as you keep exploring the environment. Hence, it might help to tweak the amount of iterations to favor earlier samples. And finally, these rollouts come from a fixed computation budget, so we need to conserve rollouts so as to spend this budget judiciously over the course of an episode. The graph on the left shows a number of beta curves we experimented with for rollout allocation. We tested our method on the dynamic function environment, which is the time-varying analytical function described earlier. On the right, we have the three best rollout allocation curves along with the baseline allocation, which is the straight line from the origin. We see that our rewards from curves allocating fewer rollouts at the beginning but more rollouts towards the end of the trajectory performed the best. Our next contribution is the exploration algorithm at the root level of the POMCP tree. The POMCP Planner uses upper confidence tree to choose the best action, which is based on a minimal regret algorithm upper confidence bound, or UCB. We consider the problem of action selection as a multi-armed bandit problem and employ fixed budget algorithms instead, as they take into account the fixed number of rollouts. They are also more explorative, as opposed to minimal regret algorithms that are trying to maximize reward while exploring the action selection space. This property helps us identify the best action in a fixed number of rollouts. Among the fixed budget algorithms, we used the UGAP-EB and successive rejects algorithms. In UGAP-EB, given a fixed budget, we get the M best actions on the gap between the action rewards. In our case, we just want the best action, so M equals 1. In successive rejects, the agent chooses actions in successive rounds a fixed number of times and rejects the worst action after each round. This style of incremental elimination can be wasteful if you have some obviously bad actions that you should eliminate. We then compared these against the default UCT algorithm in POMCP. In UCT, an exploration bonus is given to choosing each action using the number of times the parent and child have been explored. Here are the results for these different algorithms across 3 different environments. These include the simulated dynamic function environment and 2 validation environments based on the real world data, also mentioned before. The details of this are in the paper. Note that because we used fixed budget algorithms and the budget is decided by the rollout allocation curve, this contribution's performance is not independent of the rollout allocation. We can see that UGAP-EB beta is the most consistent across all environments. Finally, we move on to our final contribution, plan commitment. This contribution considers reusing POMCP's tree for multiple actions instead of one and involves multi-arm bandit theory similar to the previous contribution. These are the algorithms we considered for this contribution. First, we choose a simple method to always choose a fixed n steps from a given tree. The POMCP default with this method is n equals 1. Second, we ran UGAP-EC, which is similar to the UGAP-EB method mentioned before, but in a fixed confidence setting. Given the reward history of taking actions, it determines whether a particular action is better with a certain degree of confidence. Note that UGAP-EC does not assume any particular distribution on the reward. Finally, we tried the Welch's unequal variances t-test. This test calculates the probability of 2 populations having the same mean, even though they might have unequal variances. We use this to compare whether an action had a higher mean than the others for a given p-value. This test was of interest because independent kurtosis tests showed that these rewards were peaking near the mean, so we had a good estimate of them. Here are the results of plan commitment on the dynamic function environment. We can see that we get a slightly improved reward with the t-test while using fewer rollouts. Finally, we merge all our improvements to create our complete method. Here we see the results of our proposed method against the baseline POMCP on our validation environments from real data and also on the dynamic function environment. We see that our method gets similar reward with much fewer rollouts, and on our custom dynamic function environment, our rewards are significantly higher with fewer rollouts. To conclude, our proposed method takes into account domain-specific knowledge to achieve better performance on the adaptive sampling problem than the POMCP baseline. Our key contributions are 1. Rollout allocation, to allocate rollouts differently per call to POMCP. 2. Exploration algorithm, to choose the appropriate exploration strategy at the root of the POMCP tree. And 3. Plan commitment, to commit to a longer plan from a given POMCP tree. With our method, we can get fewer rollouts for similar reward in complex environments such as validation environments from real-world data. For simpler environments, we can get a significantly higher reward with fewer rollouts. Thank you.